because it sounds like you've really got this sales call, or the discovery part of the sales call, nailed down. We
It
want to
is
know
my
more about this.
it is my favorite part of the sales process, because I mean, typically with what we're doing, we have a detailed discovery call, decide if we're a good fit, and if we are, we might do a presentation, or we might do a paid audit, or we might do some kind of proposal, whatever that next step is, depending. As with all of us, each project, each solution is going to be a bit different, but usually we want to know, once we've kind of agreed those terms on the upfront contract side of things, then we'd really, one of my favorite questions, depending on the type of lead, is kind of first of all, what's actually prompted you to reach out to us? Like, for example, why didn't you go with, if you know other companies in your sector, why didn't you reach out to X, or why didn't you reach out to Y company? And then they might just say, look, because I saw you on LinkedIn, or you called me, or I saw your ad. And then if it was an inbound lead, then I'll always say, well, that's great. I see ads pop up all the time. What was it specifically about our offer that prompted you to take the time to give us a call or fill out our inquiry form? And then they'll give you a bit more detail. So in our case, they might say, look, I really like some of your work, or I really like this review. And it just gives you a little golden nugget that might come up as use later in the sales process, perhaps when you're doing your pitch or your demo, whatever it may be. And then there's a bunch of things that you need to kind of cover when you're doing discovery. So of course you need to kind of say, look, talk about kind of, why have you reached out to us today, or why are we having this conversation? Take the time to learn about their business. If it is a product or service that you're offering, you want to dive into deep about learning how their business operates, kind of the product or service they're offering, things like the average order values around that, so you can understand even if your product or service is going to make sense for them, and even taking the time to understand profit margins if they are doing that kind of stuff. And then a crucial thing is understanding the trigger event. So once you've took the time to understand what they do, how they do it, what you want to ask, why they want to do that now. So look, John, what's made you want to do this now? Why not 3 months ago? Why not 6 months in the future? Why do we have to have this conversation now? And that's quite a useful point. So you can actually scale the urgency of their need, because some people might just say, oh, I was just considering my options. I was just thinking about this. And that should usually send alarm bells, because you can see that there's no real urgency. Whereas if they say, look, let's say you're offering some kind of SaaS, software as a service solution, maybe you're offering like a CRM product, whatever, and they just say, look, our CM is really frustrating because we have to manually transport everything from Gmail for every new contact that comes in. Or maybe they say, look, our head of CRM's just left us in the lurch and we're really stuck. And that's great. Then you can just start digging, right? One of the best parts about discovery is just digging deeper. Then you can ask things like, well, why is that an issue? And they might say, well, we're $5,000 down because our sales team are having to spend days kind of manually inputting all this data. And you go, why is that an issue? Well, we're 10K already below our target for the month. And if we do this again for 3 months, then our chief revenue officer is going to be on my back. And then basically a big part of discovery is to keep digging until you get to the biggest part of the problem. So working out that, what we call a trigger event of why they need to do it now, understanding the importance of why they have to do it, and kind of going along the process. If you've kind of determined this is something you can help them out with, understanding things like their timeline, when do they want to get the rest solution in place, understanding things like who's actually involved in the process. So if you've gone through all these steps and you've kind of realized there's some kind of fit, you've realized they've got a sensible timeline, you've taken the time to understand things like budget. So have they actually got the money in place to do business with you? And a lot of people say you shouldn't bring up money on the first call, but I completely disagree. Ultimately, if they don't have the cash to do business with you, you're wasting their time and yours. So once you've kind of nailed down a few points and bits and pieces about their problem, and their issues, etc., you can do that. And what I should have added is one of my favorite questions to ask before you get to budget, which I've missed, is really good if you're offering kind of a solution that kind of drives results over time. Look, where do we need to get to in, say, 12 months time for you to say, working with Sam, working with Web Choice was an excellent move? This is a question that I stole from Benjamin Dennehy. Works a treat, because then you get people to actually visualize the future. And if they've got a clear answer, like, look, we want to get to X amount of revenue, or I want to get to a position where I can hire 2 more staff, then you can see they're serious about it. Whereas if they are not too sure and they can't really give you anything, that's a little bit, again, alarm bells, because they've not really thought about where their urgency for the solution. They can't really see the brighter green future in 12 months. So that question can really give you some good intel. And once you've nailed all these points, you can say, look, based against fixing problem X, getting to this timeline, solving these issues, what have you allocated as a budget towards it? If they say, look, I haven't even thought about a budget, when I believe you really should bring up budget now. So in my case, I might say, look, typically prospects with these kind of issues spend between X and Y. Can you see yourself falling within that, or is that way off the mark? If they say it's way off the mark, then you can say, well, we should probably end this conversation now, right? Whereas if they say they might battle against you and they might convince you to kind of do business with them, great. Whereas they might say, yeah, that kind of works, then you can carry on the conversation and probably wrap up, depending on how long your discovery call is, just by finding out who else is involved in the project. So as well as yourself, John, who else do we need on the next call, or who do we need to get involved in our second discovery call, or our presentation call, or our proposal call, depending on the sales process? So those are just a few points that I tend to bring up in discovery. I appreciate that everyone's product or service is going to be slightly different depending on what you do and how transactional or how long a sales cycle you've got.